Hey, John, you're good.
Okay, I'm not seeing. Oh, there we go. Recording. All right, we're good to go. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of our regional report out. It's January 26th. This is the Kansas City Metro. Having some problems with the normal dashboard that we do, so I have a different one actually to look at here that still tells a good story for what we've been doing. So let me put my screen up here for you. All right. So this is the rolled up report that the Kansas Hospital Association puts together. Coming across, the anticipating staffing shortages this week. We did hear. So this is, groups that are anticipating critical staffing shortages. I was made aware, particularly for the nurses, there's still a lot of shortages across the state and people working long hours and picking up doubles and all that. So still an issue out there. Obviously, a fourth or more of the hospitals in Kansas City still dealing with critical staffing shortages. Coming down to hospitalized, confirmed or suspected COVID patients. Last week, that number was at 684. This week, it's at 644. ICU beds with suspected or confirmed patients last week was at 163, this week at 155. And looking at a 2-week gap, by the way, that number of COVID patients has dropped from 863 to 645. And in the ICU, 184 to 155, which is good to see. Now, less ICU beds available than last week. Now, that's a dynamic number, as we know, and fluid even throughout the day. But last week we had 143 available. This week, 111. Again, I'm following the Kansas City Metro here, giving us 18%. And Kenny, you may know when you talk about, I've heard that we're taking some out-of-state patients now, as other states are in kind of the same capacity strengths that we had. But you can speak to that. And then I'm going to flip back over. Ignore these numbers. You can tell they're a little artificially low up here, but coming down, this is also good news. The case count continuing to go down here from 4,000 a couple weeks ago to 3,500 now to 3,000-ish, just under 3,000 cases last 3 weeks. Positivity rate in the Kansas City area was 6.89%. That's the lowest positivity rate that we've seen also. So generally continue to see things ease a little bit. But we'll hear from our friends in public health and in the hospitals. And then we also have a special guest on to talk about the vaccine rollout across Kansas. So let me kick it to Steve Mayhew from Johnson County first, and we'll get his update. So I guess Steve, before you talk, our special guest is Dr. Marcy Nielsen, and she is helping to coordinate the vaccine across the state. And so, particularly as you're giving an update on public health, be focused on what you guys are doing from a vaccine perspective, if you can. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Like John mentioned, I'm Steve Mayhew from the Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. As John pointed out with the dashboard, the numbers are trending in the right direction. At this point, it's always encouraging to see something like that, but there's the caveat that we feel obligated to provide that, we can't let up now. You got to maintain your social distancing practices, wear those masks and all of that. And so it's good to see those numbers going in the right direction. And a large reason for that is because everyone is being so vigilant. And so we want to see that continue, certainly from a public health standpoint, and I imagine from others as well. To talk a little bit about vaccines. So, before I do, I'll say that we continue to test, obviously across the metro, but vaccine is sort of the thing that we're really trying to kick into gear now. And so health departments throughout the metro, I believe, are starting to get more regular shipments of vaccine. And I'm sure Dr. Nielsen will talk a little bit more about that. But as we get vaccine at each of these departments, we are working with, hospitals and other providers to try to get that vaccine out there. We're trying to, host our own vaccine clinics. The governor has moved us into phase 2. And so each county is looking at that a little bit differently as they sub-prioritize. Phase 2 is a very, very large group. We estimate that just in Johnson County, it's about 200,000 people. And so when you look at the vaccine that's coming in, it certainly doesn't meet that demand. And so some sub-prioritization is necessary to make sure that we're trying to get the vaccine to target groups as efficiently as possible. I don't want to steal too much of Dr. Nielsen's thunder with the vaccine, and so I'm happy to touch on anything, from the county perspective after that update. But from a public health standpoint, it's been, vaccine for the past couple of weeks.
Hey, let me ask you one question. I'm going to ask this in every region. Do you know of in your county or other counties, if it's not your turn yet, do you guys have a waiting list or a place that someone can go and put their name down or anything like that?
So a number of the counties have created some sort of database of people who are interested in receiving the vaccine. For a number of counties, it can range from a planning tool to let us know how many people we should plan for in certain phases, all the way up to a notification tool that when we reach the phase that those people are in, they'll get an email notification that it's time for them to go book an appointment. And so it really varies across the region, but everybody does have something in place.
And what are you guys doing in Johnson County?
So in Johnson County, it was more of the planning side. Again, with phase 2, you're looking at 200,000 people, and the logistics of notification for that many people with the limited vaccine that we've been getting. It was really for a planning, but we did use some of it to let them know that. So we did kind of use it for both, actually. We have that database, and it was a survey that people could fill out and indicate, their age, where they fall into phase 2, whether it's occupation or anything like that. And we have used that to reach out to some people to let them know appointments are available and that it's their turn.
And Steve, so you say there's 200,000 people in that phase 2 for you guys where you're at. How much vaccine are you guys getting in a week, just so people can kind of do the math?
Johnson County is getting less than 7,000 doses a week.
Okay, so you can see how that's flowing, and some of that's obviously a state problem too, with just how much we're getting in as a state. It's not specific to Johnson County.
It's a long road ahead for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Another reason to not let up, along with your first point there. Let me pass it to our friend Kenny Wilk.
Well, hey, thank you, John. Kenny Wilk with the University of Kansas Health System. And it's always nice when the actual experience on the ground really marries up with the data that you're sharing. And with maybe just one slight example, that's absolutely the case. We've seen our COVID census drop just a tick. It stayed steady and kind of appears to be headed in the right direction. We're hopeful that that's going to be the case. The one exception, John, we have received a number of requests and continue to receive those requests from out of state, Oklahoma, Texas, some other states. We have not been accepting those. I don't know if some other hospitals in the metropolitan area are. I'm not aware of it, but they may be. But we certainly are getting those requests. I would just simply say that we in the metropolitan area continue to have a high demand for non-COVID care as well. So I think we're all trying to stay ahead of that. Probably the most positive news.
Hey, Kenny, can I ask you a question before you get into that positive news? Sure. When you talk about a high demand for non-COVID, is that what would be the normal high demand of this time of year, or is it higher? Because for people not in healthcare, generally there's a higher demand for ICU beds this time of year anyway.
That is a great question, John. And yeah, it's normally higher demand this time of year. Now, normally, this is some more good news that really not a lot of people are talking about, and I think it's always good to share some good news. We're seeing very little of the flu, of people hospitalized for flu. There is flu out in the community, but it's much, much reduced. And we believe that's because people are practicing the protocols. And I know Steve may want to comment that as well, but we are normally this time of year, we'd have a number of people in the hospital with flu. We don't have that, but we have a lot more people in the hospital with COVID than we would ever have with the flu. I don't want anybody to mix those two up. But we just have a lot, we don't call them elective procedures because if you're somebody that's scheduled for whatever that surgery may be, you don't consider it elective if it gets postponed, whether it be a hip, a knee, or some heart procedure. And there's just a whole lot of that, not only in the metropolitan area, but across the state. Because remember, we were shut down there for about 6 to 7 weeks in March and April, and the demand stayed the same. But back on the good news, and And I think, I know Marcy will be interested in this. She may have already heard it, but so we started vaccinating healthcare workers first. We're very fortunate and feel blessed to be able to do that. Um, Solid thought process behind that to make sure our people are available to care for the sick. And we are seeing a real positive outcome of that. So to put that in perspective, we have about, we've cut by about 2/3 the number of people that were either infected or quarantined of our staff members from what, we peaked out sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So from that peak to where we're at now, it's reduced almost 2/3. We believe that is a direct correlation to the vaccine. People are now getting vaccinated. We've got nearly everyone in our place that wanted a vaccination, and we got 70+% uptake on people taking the vaccine. We started the second shots now, and I believe that's pretty much the case across the metropolitan area, at least for hospitals. We're soft on getting some of the other healthcare providers vaccinated, but there's a pretty focused effort going on right now to make that happen. So we think that's all good news, and we're like everyone else, anxious to see more vaccine get into patients' arms all across the state. So I'll toss it back to you, John.
All right. Thank you very much, Kenny. We have Dr. Watson with Cheyenne Mountain Software, regular for us on these calls. Give us an idea what's going on with the transfer situation through the Mission Control app. Dr. Watson.
Good morning, afternoon. Now, how about flipping me the host thing, and I'll show you
a
little bit of screen data.
Yep.
And then I echo everybody's
there you go.
similar feeling that we're on the right track here, and as you will see shortly. So, I mean, normally we have a lot of red. I'll just be honest, a lot of red. We're seeing now across the state that capacity is really eased up quite a bit, and this is even over the last week, especially a big difference. What that means for transports are that, as Kenny said, we're seeing the same volume of non-COVID patients, and transport times are running in the 1 hour plus 10 minutes maybe, but COVID patients, maybe an hour, 50 minutes of wait time to move. Overall, everything looks like it's flowing much easier than it has in the past. And I think, everybody's starting to think, okay, this trend down is the trend down. And I know facilities realizing that this is a breather before a spring spike. I mean, we all do expect there, even with the vaccine, to be a spring spike, but hopefully it'll be markedly blunted over anything we've had so far. So good news across the state, and certainly with capacity in hospitals accepting patients. And I think everybody's realizing how hard we were working before, because even now it's still hard, but it's much easier than it was.
And Dr. Watson, when you talk about a spring spike, what would cause that? Is that just the way viruses ebb and flow, or?
Yeah, if you'd look at the normal course, we had the first spring spike, which was this 2020 spike, and then we had the fall spike, which typically is a lot harder. And this is if you look at it, to me, I think it's more prolonged in duration than typically a viral spike would be in the fall. And then in the spring, you'd expect it to be probably, if there were vaccinations and if there were treatments of all, then the spring spike would be less than the first spring spike, which I think the hope is that we can move vaccine out enough that this March, April period will actually be less than it would have been predicted. So we're all at 7,000 a week at Johnson County. I mean, that's just unbelievable. We've heard a lot of things about delay in numbers and all that, but that's just a spit in the bucket here of need. So I don't know what the prospect is.
And it's like that. I mean, we're getting 40, I think we have 1 million people in the phase 2 for Kansas, and we get about 50,000, 40 to 50,000 a week right now. So,
oh my gosh, that's
right now, they're just going to have to be patient, and hopefully the Fed's going to be able to pump more vaccines our way and we get it in arms. And that's a perfect pivot to Dr. Nielsen here. I'm going to show one stat here. If you can make me the host again, Dr. Watson. We've used this before, and so I'm going to start just pulling it up regularly. This is on the, can you make me the host there, Dr. Watson? There we go. This is, it went to Kansas Regional. There we go. Okay. Sorry for that difficulty there. This is just up when you go to kansasvaccine.gov. Remember, 2-season vaccine. This is when you click on data here, what you get. And so we're seeing that more people vaccinated. We were around 3.5% last week, now 4.5%. So we're making progress as the doses are coming in. And they've cleaned it up a little bit. So now you can see vaccines, how they've been administered by age group. This is not the percent of that age group. This is just the percent of the total here. How much Pfizer and Moderna, male versus female, and then kind of what's going out each week. I also thought people would find this interesting. When you come down here, you can see how many vaccines the week of January 25th have come into your county, and what that looks like. So I see Johnson County here with 6,800. Steve was talking about. And so a lot of good information on this website. I just want to make sure that you guys knew that and that we'd look at that as we pass it over to our friend, Dr. Marcy Nielsen. And Marcy, I'll make you the host so you can share. Did you have some slides you wanted to share?
I do.
Okay. Now, I need to make sure this is the first call that I'm introducing you right.
Okay.
Chief Advisor of COVID-19 Coordination for the governor. Is that right?
That's it.
A doctor and a chief, a woman of many talents, many hats. So we're glad to have you here with us, and would love for you to give us an update on the vaccine. Let me make you the host here. There you go.
Well, thank you for your invitation. Thank you for doing this. I have been helping the governor's office for the past few months, particularly on testing. Yesterday was my first day on the job in my chief role. And in part, the reason that I wanted to join this effort is because it really and truly is going to take a village to be able to vaccinate the whole population. I appreciate your sharing those statistics, John, and pointing out that website will continue to get more and better information. It feels like there's a vacuum of information, and people are very anxious and stressed about what's going to happen, what phase are we in, where am I on that phase? And so I know you've already covered a fair amount of this, so I'm going to try and not be redundant and show just a few slides if I am able to. Well, there's my email. Oh, there's me and the new president. That's probably not what we're looking at either. I was afraid that this was going to happen as soon as I shared my screen. You
have a PowerPoint presentation up there on one of your tabs at the top.
Do I? Because I only had it in PDF mode. So Dr. Norman presented today to the House and Senate Public Health Committees. And so I thought I might just preview a few of his slides. You'll see, John, this will look familiar to you, given that you too highlighted the statistics. I think folks on the phone are pretty familiar with the 2 vaccines that we have been administering in the United States. So I am happy to answer questions there. But I really wanted to focus on a few things. At this point in time, we have so many individuals who want to get vaccinated, and it's important for us to figure out when and where and how we're going to get them vaccinated. But I think it's important context to remember we have a pretty good chunk of the population that is also very nervous about getting vaccinated. And so we need to keep talking about the safety that the manufacturers kept in mind as they created these vaccines, and not forget that vaccine hesitancy, meaning people who are hesitating to get the vaccine, will be a problem. It will be an increasing problem. And so I know you'll be addressing that in future sessions. I think today the question we get asked a lot of questions about is, how are the vaccines coming to various communities in Kansas? I appreciated your highlighting which counties are getting how much vaccine. I would want to underscore there that that is largely related to population. We were, of course, in phase 1, vaccinating healthcare workers and long-term care facilities. So we made decisions based on where healthcare workers are, as well as long-term care facilities. This slide describes how the process works in terms of the vaccine manufacturer sending vaccine to the main distributor, a big company called McKesson. In some cases, and certainly in the case of the Pfizer vaccine, which needs to be stored in ultra cold storage, there's some direct distribution from McKesson to the administration sites. In some cases, we've got partner depots. But part of what makes all of this complex is that folks have to remember there are ancillary supplies that we also need to get to the vaccine sites. And we need to have providers teed up to be able to give the vaccines. So this is one picture into how we're getting vaccines into communities in Kansas. I think it's helpful to understand where we come from. And I mentioned phase 1, the healthcare workers, that included hospitals, local health departments, federally qualified health centers, and long-term and assisted living facilities. We partnered with associations all throughout the state to ensure that we were adequately getting vaccines to these healthcare workers. We did a survey after we got the vaccine out to make sure any healthcare workers who had been missed would have access. So that was phase 1. And that part of the process was fairly straightforward. We estimated how many individuals we had who fit these categories, and we sent that number of vaccine out to those counties. But now we're entering into a new phase. And that new phase, phase 2, we need to think about how we take the number of vaccines that we're getting. Just a reminder, we don't have a lot of control over how much vaccine comes to Kansas. We're a small state. We don't get a lot of vaccine. We only know how much vaccine we're getting a week in advance. Sometimes we get less vaccine than the feds have told us. Sometimes we get more. It makes it really difficult to help our partners on the ground plan because we're estimating what we're going to be able to get. And I really want to underscore to all of our partners, we appreciate how frustrating that must be. It's frustrating to us. We anticipate that this gets better in the next few weeks and months. It's been prioritized by the Biden administration to help us with our planning. But what the state needs to do when we get the vaccine is think about who is at the greatest risk and how we get vaccine to counties with these folks. We are looking at proximity. So this is when we think about congregate settings, which is in phase 2. The proximity to other individuals, the type of contact, the contact duration. This is kind of public health 101. Who do we need to think about who quote fits the at-risk category? And as you can see here, and I've mentioned a few times, in Kansas, we just started phase 2. So we are focused on individuals over the age of 65 in congregate settings, those critical workers who are at highest risk of contacting others with COVID. And then of course, any healthcare workers or long-term care residents who weren't vaccinated in the previous phases. I'll end on one slide, and that is what we will soon be rolling out. So John, the dashboard that you shared is at kansasvaccine.gov. But within the next few days, we're going to be rolling out a map that will help individuals in Kansas navigate to those places in the states where providers will be offering vaccines. I appreciated your asking my colleague from KDHE about whether his county has a sign-up mechanism in Johnson County. Some counties are doing that, other counties are not. What this map is going to do is help individuals understand where are the providers in my county who are offering vaccine, and how should I be getting access to the vaccine. So is there a waiting list? Is there a phone number? What office hours are these particular facilities open? Trying to do what we can in order to help residents. What folks may not be aware of is the CDC is actually working on a pretty detailed map called Vaccine Finder, but that's not going to be available until mid-February. And so this map that the state will be sharing is a bit of a stopgap. I'm going to stop here so that we can do a little Q&A. And my apologies, I was trying to move my computer so people wouldn't have to stare at a big white light behind my head. I think I look a little angelic right now, and Kenny Wilk can tell you that has basically never happened in my life. So I'm gonna keep my head perfectly still because I'm gonna hold on to that angel.
Well, thank you, Marcy. I appreciate that. It's always good to have a halo when you're starting.
Exactly.
Hey, Steve, Kenny, Dr. Watson, you guys have any questions for Marcy while we have her? We got a couple minutes here before we wrap up.
Not at this time.
Yeah, thank you,
But
Marcy.
thank you, Marcy.
Good
You
work.
know, I think, you know, I would say, you don't have to answer this right now, but I think, you know, one of the questions I think on a lot of hospitals' minds, obviously, I think most hospitals are vaccinating their personnel, but what role will hospitals play in the general public vaccination process? Because I believe the public health officers are the primary entry, and I know every county's, I think, a little bit different, but I think that's a question kind of on everyone's mind, and the hospitals.
Yeah, and we anticipate a significant role moving forward, particularly with the Pfizer vaccine, based on the fact that it needs to be kept in ultra cold storage. So we are very interested in working with those. We also anticipate the stand-up of mass vaccination sites, that those are going to be important opportunities to go out into communities and get folks vaccinated. And we anticipate that we'll have some hospitals who are interested in helping host those.
All right. Well, I got to wrap us up here. Marcy, thank you. Dr. Watson, Steve, Kenny, for your contributions today. We appreciate it. I want to remind everybody, if you want to get the email from these reports, go to our website, covid.ks.gov/report-outs. We have the past dashboards and past calls on there if you want to look back. But if you sign up with your email, you can get this right after. If you have questions for us, ksregionalreport@gmail.com. And thank you, everybody. We're glad you're here. We'll be here this time next week, 1 o'clock for Kansas City Metro. Hope everybody has a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.